Take her away now.
They called me a gold digger. They ripped my dress. They dragged me down the marble steps like I was nothing. But the moment those golden doors opened and my brother walked in, every cruel laugh turned to silence. That night, they learned what real power looks like. I still remember the night that invitation arrived, a thick ivory envelope with golden edges, my name written in perfect calligraphy. For a moment, I thought it must have been sent to the wrong person. Me? Invited to a charity gala at the Grand Rose Mansion? But as I looked closer, my hands trembled. The host's name was printed at the bottom, Ethan Harrington, my brother. The same brother who'd left home years ago, chasing dreams so high they'd carried him out of my reach. I hadn't seen him since the day he promised, "One day, I'll make us proud." And now, after all these years, there it was, a golden ticket back into his world. I spent hours that evening deciding what to wear. My wardrobe didn't exactly scream luxury. I didn't have diamonds or silk, just a simple cream-colored dress my mother had sewn years ago for a friend's wedding. I ironed it carefully, brushed my hair into loose waves, and put on the only earrings I owned, small pearls that had lost their shine but not their meaning. I wanted to look presentable, not perfect. After all, he was my brother. He wouldn't care about appearances, or so I believed. As I rode the bus toward the mansion, the city lights reflected against the window like tiny stars. I clutched the invitation close, feeling both nervous and excited. I kept imagining how it would go. He'd see me, smile that same boyish smile and say, "Abby, you came." We'd laugh about old times, and for once I wouldn't be the girl working 2 jobs or the one everyone looked down on. I'd just be his sister again. When I arrived, the Grand Rose Mansion stood like a palace under the moonlight, its tall glass windows glowing gold, the air filled with perfume, violin music, and the chatter of the wealthy. I froze for a second at the gate, feeling painfully out of place. Women in shimmering gowns stepped out of sleek cars, escorted by men in tailored suits. I walked up the marble steps quietly, hoping no one would notice how plain I looked. But of course, they did. Their glances brushed over me, not curious, just dismissive, like I was a smudge on their perfect night. At the reception desk, I handed my invitation to the woman in charge, a tall, blonde lady with sharp red lipstick and eyes that scanned me like a security camera. She didn't smile. She didn't even look at the card properly before her lips curled into a smirk. "And you are?" she asked, her tone already laced with suspicion. I told her softly, "I'm Abigail Harrington, Ethan's sister." The words felt strange, fragile, like they didn't belong in this glittering world. For a moment I thought she'd nod and welcome me in. Instead, she laughed quietly, the kind of laugh that burns more than it cuts. "Of course you are," she said, her gaze traveling from my worn shoes to my simple dress. "We'll see about that." And just like that, the night that was supposed to bring me closer to my brother had begun, with doubt in her eyes and a lump in my throat. I didn't know then that the next few hours would change everything. The moment I stepped into that grand ballroom, it felt like walking into another world, one that wasn't built for people like me. Golden chandeliers hung from the ceiling like frozen suns, and the marble floor gleamed so perfectly it almost looked like water. Everywhere I turned, there were people laughing, sipping champagne, taking pictures, women in glittering gowns that caught the light like mirrors, men with voices so smooth they barely sounded real. I kept telling myself to breathe, to blend in, to wait quietly until my brother arrived. I stood near the edge of the crowd, clutching my small purse, trying not to fidget. Every minute that passed made me more aware of how invisible, yet exposed, I felt. A few people glanced at me, then whispered something to their friends and smiled. I told myself it didn't matter. I was here for my brother, not their approval. But then the blonde woman from the reception appeared again, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor like warning bells. "There you are," she said loudly, as if she'd caught a thief. "I told you to wait outside." Her voice sliced through the music, drawing every pair of eyes in the room toward us. I froze. I showed you my invitation, I whispered, my voice trembling. I'm Abigail. She snatched the invitation from my hand and waved it in the air. A printed card doesn't prove anything, she sneered. These events attract all sorts of opportunists. A few people laughed. I felt my cheeks burn, the room spinning just a little. I tried to explain again, but before I could, she leaned closer and whispered, You really thought you could fool us, didn't you? You don't belong here. You look like someone who came to trap a rich man, not support charity. Her perfume was heavy, choking almost, and her words hit harder than any slap. People began circling, watching, waiting. Please, I said, my voice breaking, I'm not lying. This event, it belongs to my brother. He's the host. Her expression twisted into amusement. Your brother? She repeated, loud enough for everyone to hear. And who exactly is your brother, sweetheart? The waiter? Laughter rippled through the crowd. I felt tears sting my eyes, but I swallowed them back, desperate not to give her the satisfaction. She took a step back, her voice suddenly cold and sharp. You know what? I've had enough. Security. Before I could move, 2 guards appeared beside me, tall, expressionless, professional in their cruelty. Take her outside, the woman ordered. She's disturbing our guests. The guards each grabbed one of my arms. I tried to pull free, shaking my head, whispering, Please, let me go. You don't understand, but they didn't care. The blonde manager crossed her arms, watching as they began dragging me toward the door. Someone laughed again, someone else clapped, and as I stumbled in my torn dress, the woman's voice followed me like poison. Next time, dress the part before pretending to be someone important. The music had resumed, but I couldn't hear it anymore. All I could hear was the sound of my own heart, breaking, 1 beat at a time. I can still feel the sting of those hands on my arms, cold, firm, and merciless. The guards didn't speak a word. They just did what they were told, like I was a problem to be removed, not a person being humiliated. My heels scraped against the marble floor as they dragged me across the hall, and I could hear laughter echoing behind me. Some people whispered, others recorded on their phones, and a few even smirked as if my pain was entertainment. I kept saying the same words over and over, desperate, trembling. Please, stop. This is my brother's gala. I belong here. But the more I spoke, the more invisible I became. As we reached the grand staircase, I stumbled. My dress tore at the side where the manager had grabbed me earlier. The fabric caught against one of the steps, ripping further as I fell to my knees. I could taste the salt of my tears as I whispered, Please don't do this. But the guards just tightened their grip, lifting me roughly by the arms. The golden chandeliers above blurred through my tears, and the laughter of strangers burned in my ears. I remember seeing my reflection in the polished marble floor, my hair undone, my makeup streaked, my once white dress now wrinkled and torn. I looked like a ghost haunting a place I was never meant to enter. Every step down those stairs felt heavier than the last, like I was sinking into shame I hadn't earned. The air outside was colder than I expected, sharp against my skin. Snow had begun to fall, thin, icy flakes landing softly on my shoulders as if the sky itself pitied me. One of the guards shoved me lightly toward the driveway, and I nearly lost my balance. My hands hit the cold stone. My palms burned. Go, one of them muttered. Don't come back. I turned toward the doors, but they were already closing. The sound of the latch clicking felt final, like a lock on my dignity. I sank down on the steps, trembling, hugging myself for warmth. My breath came out in small white clouds, each one fading faster than the last. Inside, the music started again. The violins played as if nothing had happened. My humiliation became just another secret buried under chandeliers and champagne. I looked down at my torn dress and whispered to myself, He'll come. My brother will come. It was all I had left, hope. But hope, when mixed with pain, feels like a knife. It cuts slow, reminding you of everything you've lost. I sat there shivering, the snow gathering in my hair, tears freezing on my cheeks, and just when I thought the night couldn't get any colder, I heard the sharp screech of tires. A convoy of luxury cars pulled up to the entrance. The doors swung open and the murmurs from inside turned to gasps. Someone whispered, "He's here." And in that moment, everything stopped. Even the snow. The sound of engines echoed through the courtyard like thunder rolling across the night sky. I lifted my head slowly, still sitting on the cold stone steps, my hands trembling. The air shifted. You could feel the change before you even saw him. The security guards who had dragged me out straightened suddenly, their posture turning rigid. The golden doors burst open, and a rush of warm air and light spilled out from the ballroom. Then he stepped out, my brother, Ethan Harrington. The cameras began to flash instantly, and voices filled the air, excitement, respect, awe. I hadn't seen him in years, and yet I recognized him in a heartbeat. The confident stride, the calm authority in his eyes, the same protective look he used to give me when we were kids. He looked different, of course. Older, sharper, dressed in a tailored suit that screamed power. But the heart beneath it? That was still my brother. He was shaking hands, smiling politely at the crowd, until his eyes found mine. For a moment, time froze. The noise faded, the flashes dimmed, and the world narrowed to that one look. Confusion, shock, then anger so raw it could melt the snow beneath our feet. His smile disappeared. He walked straight toward me, fast, ignoring everyone calling his name. The guards who had thrown me out tried to step aside, but his voice cut through the silence like steel. "Who did this?" No one answered. The blonde manager, who'd been laughing earlier, stood frozen near the door, her confidence draining by the second. "Mr. Harrington," she began, but he raised his hand sharply, silencing her mid-sentence. He took off his long black coat and wrapped it around my shoulders, his jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscle twitch. "Who did this?" I opened my mouth to speak, but he stopped me gently, his voice softer when he turned to me. "You don't have to say it, Abby." His eyes softened for the first time, filled with something I hadn't seen in a long time. Guilt. "I'm so sorry." Then, turning back toward the crowd, his voice boomed across the courtyard. "Who thought it was acceptable to drag a woman, my sister, through the snow like she's garbage?" No one moved. No one dared breathe. The blonde woman's lips trembled as she tried to form an excuse, but it was too late. He had already seen the torn fabric of my dress, the red marks on my arm, the tears that hadn't yet dried. He took my hand, helping me up the steps. The crowd inside parted in silence, like waves before a storm. Every head lowered as we walked past. The same people who had laughed moments ago now stared at the floor in shame. My heart pounded, but not from fear anymore. This time, it was relief. Fierce, trembling relief. As we reached the grand hall again, my brother's voice echoed under the chandeliers. "You all came here tonight to raise money for charity," he said, his tone icy calm. "But perhaps it's time we raised something else. Humanity." And in that single moment, the balance of power shifted. The woman who had once called me worthless now stood small before the man who would show her what worth truly meant. The silence that followed was heavier than thunder. Every pair of eyes in that glittering ballroom turned toward my brother, and no one dared move. The blonde manager's hands fidgeted nervously against her clipboard, the smirk that once danced on her lips now replaced by fear. My brother stood tall, his voice cutting through the silence with terrifying precision. "I asked a simple question," he said, his tone calm but cold enough to chill the room. "Who humiliated my sister?" No one spoke. The chandeliers above flickered slightly, their light bouncing off faces that had turned pale. Then, the blonde manager finally stepped forward, forcing an unsteady smile. "Mr. Harrington," she began, her voice trembling, "there must be some misunderstanding." I didn't know she was related to you. She came early, and—" He raised a hand, and she froze. "So, you're saying," he interrupted, "that you judged her not because she did something wrong, but because she looked different from you?" She opened her mouth, but no words came. He stepped closer, lowering his voice so every word felt sharp and deliberate. You tore her dress. You called her names. You dragged her out like she was nothing. In my house, his jaw tightened, and for a moment, I could see the little boy who used to defend me at school, except now, that boy had the power of a billionaire behind him. He turned to the guards next. You two, he said firmly. The ones who touched her. You're done here. Effective immediately. The guards exchanged panicked looks, their bravado gone. The blonde manager tried to plead, Please, sir, I was only doing my job. He didn't let her finish. Your job, he said coldly, was to welcome people with grace and respect. Instead, you chose cruelty. You forgot what this event stands for. He glanced at the banner above the ballroom entrance, the Harrington Foundation, Dignity for All. The irony hung in the air like smoke. Then his voice dropped to a low, dangerous calm. Security, he said, this time addressing new staff who had come forward. Escort her out. Use the same door she used for my sister. The crowd gasped. The blonde woman's face went white as the guards stepped toward her. Wait, no, please, she begged, but it was too late. The same grand staircase she'd once used to throw me out now became her stage of disgrace. She stumbled down in tears, and no one laughed this time. Only silence followed. My brother turned back to the guests, his gaze sweeping the room. Tonight's gala was meant to raise money for women's empowerment, he said, his voice steady, echoing under the chandeliers. But it seems we forgot what empowerment means. It's not just about donations. It's about decency. Some guests shifted awkwardly, others lowered their eyes. If my sister, he continued, pointing gently toward me, hadn't been humiliated, maybe none of you would have remembered that lesson, so from now on, every cent raised tonight will go toward her foundation, one that protects and uplifts women who've faced humiliation or discrimination. The applause started slowly, hesitant, almost guilty. Then it grew louder, echoing through the ballroom. My eyes filled with tears as he took my hand and raised it before the crowd. This, he said softly, looking at me, is what strength looks like. And in that moment, surrounded by the same people who had mocked me, I stood taller than I ever had before. Not because of revenge, but because justice had finally spoken. When the applause faded, I could barely breathe. Not from shock, but from the feeling that something deep inside me had finally broken free, the part that had spent years shrinking to make others comfortable. My brother turned to me with that same look he used to give when I fell off my bike as a kid, pride mixed with apology. He didn't have to say anything. The way he gently brushed the snow from my shoulder, the way he nodded as if to say, "You're safe now," said it all. The rest of the night passed like a dream I hadn't known I needed. My brother's assistant handed me a fresh gown, elegant, simple, soft gold that shimmered beneath the chandelier light. When I returned to the ballroom, whispers followed me again. But this time they were filled with awe, not mockery. The same women who'd turned away earlier now smiled too brightly, pretending to care. I didn't need their approval anymore. As the orchestra began playing again, my brother walked to the center of the stage. "Before we continue tonight," he said, his voice carrying a new kind of strength, "I'd like to make one final announcement." He reached for my hand, guiding me forward. From this day on, the foundation will be co-led by my sister, Abigail Harrington, the woman who reminded me that compassion is the greatest form of power. The crowd stood and clapped, not because they were told to, but because they knew they'd witnessed something real. Some wiped tears. Some couldn't even meet my eyes. I didn't feel small anymore. I felt steady, whole, seen. Later, as the event ended and guests began to leave, my brother and I stood by the glass doors of the mansion. Outside, the snow had stopped falling. The world looked clean, quiet, and new. "You didn't have to do all that," I whispered. "You already made your point." He smiled faintly. "I didn't do it for me." I did it for every woman they'll think twice before humiliating again. He looked at me then, softer. And for Mom. She always said, you were stronger than you believed. The words hit something inside me. For the first time in years, I let myself cry. Not from pain, but release. That night, as the lights dimmed and the last guests left, I stepped outside and stood where it had all begun. On those marble steps. The same place where I had been dragged and broken now felt like sacred ground. I looked up at the night sky and whispered, "We made it, Mom." Sometimes redemption doesn't come wrapped in apology. It comes in quiet moments of truth, when the world finally sees you for who you are. If you've ever been laughed at, judged, or pushed aside, remember Abigail's story. True revenge isn't about shouting louder. It's about walking back into the same room with your head held high. Hit that like button, share this story, and subscribe for more tales of dignity, power, and poetic justice, because some storms exist only to reveal your strength.